Okay guys, once you have all of your frames rendered, so I have frames 1 through 120 in a separate folder, my renders folder, you should launch Adobe After Effects. Now this is different software again, and this will be an introduction to Adobe After Effects, especially for those of you who will be continuing on Digital Art 2. We will use After Effects fairly extensively next year. It's super cool software. You can add really cool effects, do some compositing, so on and so forth. But when you launch After Effects, you may get a screen that looks like this. This is like the home screen. It's got some other projects that I've created in the past. Really, I think the easiest thing to do would be to just close that and go to our working user interface, and you see this button, big button right in the middle. It says New Composition from Footage. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to navigate to where I have my frames stored. So 3D House, Renders, and I'm going to click on that. Because we use the .tga, a Targa file format for when we render, down here at the very bottom you'll see Targa Sequence. You want to make sure that is checked. All I have to do is click on one frame and then make sure Targa Sequence is checked. And when I hit import, it will import all of those files. I believe the default for interpret footage is fine. You don't have to worry about changing that. And I'm just going to click OK. And what you'll see is my house in the middle of my, sorry, I got a fly flying around this bugging me. It's taking away my concentration. You can zoom in here and back. You're not scaling anything up. If you want to zoom in a little bit to take a better look, you'll see that I have this timeline here. This is my time slider, and I can scrub through to see my renders. Just keep in mind in your time slider, when you scrub through renders, it may de-res a little bit, and so it's going to look a little bit worse than it will when we render. That's just because After Effects is trying to show you the animation in real time, so it sort of has to drop some pixels in order to be able to do that. Now, just a brief overview of the interface here, and I'm not going to go over everything. You have your project window over here. This right here is basically like our layers. So right now I've got a layer that's one layer that contains all 1 through 120 targets. That's why we can see this thing animate like we can. But what we want to do is create a background layer, and then we're going to render the whole thing out as a single MP4 file. So to find a background layer, obviously just go to Google and find whatever you want. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it matches up perfectly. I don't care if the lighting is perfect, the colors are perfect, the angle of the camera. I don't care. This is just a process that I want to get you guys through pretty quickly, so you don't take a lot of time. So I found this image here, mountain background. I'm going to save it, and let's see where we want to put this. Let's put it in 3D House. It is a JPEG, so that's good. I'm just going to put it in my basic 3D House folder. Hit save. Go back to After Effects, and I'm going to go to File, Import, File. And I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to find that mountain, and I'm going to drag it from our projects folder, and I'm going to put it underneath that blue line right there. As soon as I let go of this, it will drop it beneath my house, and it actually fits in there pretty good. You may have to scale it up or down, but keep in mind in After Effects the aspect ratio isn't locked, so you'll squash and stretch pretty easily. In order to not do that, just hold down Shift and it'll scale it uniformly. So I'm actually going to scale it up a little bit and put my house down here. Careful not to see the background black, and that'll work right there. Okay, now what we're going to do is animate this background just slightly. And again, this doesn't have to look great, doesn't have to look perfect. This is just a little trick so that our background isn't stale and stagnant and not moving when we know we have a camera move that's going around the front side of our house. So in order to animate any layer, this is almost just like Photoshop. We click the little caret in that layer, and you'll see a very familiar word, transform, with a bunch of different things you can keyframe. And here are those little familiar stopwatches, just like Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my background image all the way left and make sure my slider is at frame 0, and I'm going to hit that stopwatch, and you'll see we created a keyframe there. Then navigate to the end of our animation at frame 120, and when I move my background image over to the right. As soon as I let go of my mouse button, boom, we get an automatic keyframe there. And now we have this movement from left to right. And again, it looks janky. That's fine. Again, this is just a little procedure that I want you guys to go through. If you want to render this in RAM preview mode, you can hit the space bar and you'll see the frames load up. That's all these green frames, and you'll see the actual speed, hopefully, that will be rendered. And that looks good enough for this project. So I'm going to hit space bar again to stop that. And now we need to render our MP4. So we have to go up to File, Export, Add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. Now when we launch this, it may take a few minutes. Okay? Adobe Media Importer, or Adobe Media is a separate piece of software. So it, whatever reason, it takes time to load up. So I'm just going to hit pause of this video while this thing takes its sweet time to load up. So now once Adobe Media Encoder finally pops up, you'll have to wait for a minute for it to show up in your queue. So we're really focused on this window up here. There's a lot of stuff in here, media browser, preset browser, that basically at this point you can ignore. So I'm going to sit here and wait until I see my project show up. Oh, there it is. So by default, we have some stuff. Anything that's highlighted in blue or in blue font means you can click on it and do something with. So I'm going to click on H264, and it's going to take its sweet time again to create a dynamic link connection, which I have no idea what that means. I'm assuming it's connecting to the project with some sort of formatting. I don't know. I don't care. I just have to wait for this window to pop up. And here we'll see a preview. This is basically a work area time range over here. We have our export settings here, which are probably the most important things we need to pay attention to. So we have output name. I'm going to change that to, because I want to tell it where to render. So I'm going to go basically just into my 3D house folder. And I'm going to name this appropriately. This is the file you'll be turning in. Harley J 3D house, save. And that's not going to export it. That's just changing the name and telling the computer where you want to render to. We have no audio, so I'm going to uncheck that. And basically everything else in here is good by default. So I'm going to hit OK. And once we get back to this media encoder screen, all we have to do is hit play. And you'll see down here at the bottom, it'll render, and it'll render fairly quickly. And at the end, you'll hear a little blip, and this bar will stop moving. And I'm not sure why it's frozen right now. I think it's just finishing up the encoding. And wait for it. Hopefully it didn't crash. So now that it finished rendering, I'm going to minimize all this stuff. I'm going to bring up my File Explorer, and there's my MP4. If I double click on it just to check it out, make sure everything rendered properly. Again, it takes a little bit of time. You also have to understand that Adobe After Effects takes up a lot of processing power on your computer, so it will slow like everything down, especially with these machines, these computers. So here we have our little video that we can submit for an excellent grade and be done with this project.